Chapter 2, Part 1. Bad things happen on laundry day. It's probably time to just accept that. Keith doesn't want to, particularly, but he's a logical person. The last 19 laundry days have ended in disaster of some kind. Ending up with pink socks because he mixed his colors with his whites now registers as maybe a 2 on his personal laundry disaster scale, while wearing a shirt that says "Daddy's Little Boy" in front of Shiro is a firm 8. Someday he's going to tempt fate and end up with a 10 on the laundry disaster scale, and it'll all be over. This isn't a 10, but it feels like it might qualify as a 6.3. "It's not a big deal. I have to do laundry today anyway," he says. Quite possibly he's been possessed by some kind of helpful, doting, June Cleaver-style ghost. That's why he's saying, "Just leave it in the main area." Shiro rubs at the back of his neck. Honestly, he looks like shit. Or as much like shit as it's possible for someone like Shiro to look. The faint furrow between his eyebrows just highlights the bruises beneath his eyes and 2 pale casts to his skin. But he wouldn't be Shiro if he didn't offer an out. "Are you sure, Keith?" And Keith wouldn't be Keith if he didn't ignore the out. "Yeah, I'll take care of it." Whatever he's expecting next, it's not the way Shiro huffs out a laugh and leans back against the kitchenette counter. Scrubbing his prosthetic through his hair, he says wryly, "I must look like absolute shit." "Kind of," is out of Keith's mouth before he can stop it. A flush climbs up the back of his neck even as he tries to backpedal. "I would've. Anyway, it's not a big deal. I just wanted to make things easier for you, is all." "No, that's worse." "It's not a big deal." If he says that enough, maybe he'll make it true. Coffee churns in Keith's gut as he forces himself to shut up. The sudden silence is nauseating. Unable to meet Shiro's gaze and desperate for something to do, he grabs their abandoned cereal bowls. Damn that June Cleaver ghost that has him heading for the sink. It only occurs to him as he elbows on the faucet that he's put himself right next to Shiro. At least the running water means it's no longer silent. Halfway through rinsing Shiro's bowl, he has to bite back a yelp as a hand cups the side of his head. Fingers tingle in his hair and rub gently against his scalp. Petting him. Shiro is petting him. Weird, but nice. "Thank you, Keith," Shiro says. "It's not a..." Shiro leans down and presses a kiss to Keith's temple. His lips are warm and slightly damp. The rush of his exhale ruffles the wisps at Keith's hairline. Heat blossoms from where they're connected. When he pulls away, Keith's fingers convulse around the cereal bowl at the sudden loss. A whimper escapes Keith's throat, barely covered by the easy way Shiro says, "You're so good for me." It's not something Keith's proud of, but he spends the next 3 minutes scrubbing at a cereal bowl with white-knuckle fervor until his brain comes back online. Doing their joint laundry will take most of the day. It shouldn't. They both live in some variation of jeans, dark tees, and the occasional flannel or button-down for variety. All of their towels and sheets are dark gray, because those were what was on clearance sale when they went to Target. Even if Keith believed in the sort loads by color and cloth weight system that Lance swears by, for the record, he doesn't, they'd max out at 2 loads. Except he forgot to factor in that both of them avoid laundry until the need is critical, which means that he's got 4 loads to process through the shitty shared laundry in the dorm's basement. And, best of all, he's missing pants to go downstairs in. Stomping back into his room, he goes for his closet and surveys the barren landscape. Mismatched socks, a sweat-stained t-shirt that probably also belongs in the wash, and a pair of sweatpants. Grabbing the sweatpants, he puts them to his nose for the sniff test. They pass! It says he's yanking them on that he notices what they'd been laid over. That fucking bear! It stares up at him with beady black eyes, judgmentally. There's a reason you're in here, he tells the bear. You're stuffed with lies and lust. While true, this does not stop the bear from judging him. Somehow, he ends up taking the bear along with the shirt into the living room. The shirt goes into one of the less heaping piles of laundry. The bear gets chucked onto the couch. Keith, for his part, ignores it as he takes down the first load of laundry, and as he gathers up his study materials, and as he settles into working on an essay due next week for his World Lit class. When he finds himself reading the same paragraph for the third time, he finally gives in. Closing his laptop, he leans forward and mutters, "Why did Hunk even think you'd be helpful?" The bear doesn't answer, just sits on the other end of the couch. Despite being inanimate, he feels like it radiates condemnation. Its eyes really are beady, and the red bow is ugly. Lance has terrible taste and absolutely deserved the hot mess of a 5-minute relationship he got with Naima. By all accounts, Hunk has better taste and better luck with women, but that's gotten called into question because this fucking bear. Keith doesn't understand straight people. You're cursed, he says, nudging the bear with his foot. Maybe he's been doing this wrong. None of his friends are kinky, or if they are, they haven't volunteered that information, and he's sure as hell not going to ask now. Also, they're straight. Except for Pidge, who's something. Another thing he's not going to ask. Either she tells him herself, or he goes to his grave not knowing. Point is, maybe the plan is flawed because he's drawing from flawed sources. That would explain Lance's continued persistence in suggesting that he buy a pacifier. All I'm saying is it could be useful. You know, just in case. Keith reopens his laptop and starts a new browser window. Chewing at the tip of his thumb, he stares down the accusatory blink of the cursor. What information will he bear to Google about his lack of sex life today? Daddy Kink gives him definitions of dubious quality and articles from women's magazines about how having a daddy kink isn't by definition unfeminist, and a sea of pastel-toned and lace-frothed Instagram feeds. Daddy Kink Gay takes him straight to the porn. How to do Daddy Kink mostly leads him back to the first set of results, with a few personal blogs sprinkled in for flavor and an op-ed that tells him he has daddy issues. He's reading that last one when he bites straight through the cuticle and tastes blood. Wincing, he pulls his thumb away from his mouth and surveys the damage. It's bleeding freely and stings. But probably it's not too bad, he decides. Just enough that he needs to make sure he puts on a band-aid before he goes into the lab. Closing out the tab, he clicks on the next promising link in the results. Advice about how to discipline subs when in a daddy kink dynamic. Not useful. The problem is this. None of these things he's reading sounds like him. They're all talking about natural submission and getting back in touch with your inner child. Forget that he doesn't know what natural submission would look like to some middle-aged Cosma writer. Keith doesn't have an inner child to get in touch with. That's why he had to ask his friends. Somewhere in his gut is a sinking sensation that maybe he's not actually cut out for this. Another link takes him to a list of traits that make up an ideal baby. Keith's only half paying attention as he scans down the page. Pretty? Well, he's never been turned away in bed. Young? At least on paper, yeah. Knows her worth when it comes to negotiating her sugar allowance? Oh, wait. Keith's on a page about sugar babies. Exit the tab. Try again. It's not a bad idea to change tack. Most of his research so far has been about what daddy kink is, but nothing's really talked about the daddy side of the equation, which, come to think of it, is kind of weird. Ideal daddy doms finds more porn. Also, more lists. Yet another blog done in pink and sparkles opens, promising the 9 essential traits of daddy doms, and he reads, "Daddies are kind and protective and loving," the blog tells him. "An ideal daddy nurtures and disciplines and indulges his baby in equal measures." Buried beneath the anecdotes about shopping trips to the lingerie store and the blog writer's worrying tendency to capitalize masculine pronouns, there's something. Keith lifts his thumb back to his lips and nibbles at the end, ignoring the salt sting of blood. In all honesty, he hadn't really thought through the concept of Shiro as a daddy dom. Somehow he'd kept it in the abstract. But now he's thinking about it. Daddy fits Shiro. Natural as the way he brings Keith food in the lab, or reminds Keith to tape his hands before having a go at the bag in the gym, or pulls Keith close by the nape of his neck when they're moving through crowds. There's not a place on Earth that Keith knows of that feels half as safe as Shiro's arms. Even discipline would come easy, as the way Shiro swats Keith's ass when he's mouthy, or waits Keith out when he's sullen, or talks Keith down when he's angry. So it turns out, Shiro's a naturally ideal daddy, and Keith's? Frustration pulses through his veins. If there weren't 3 more loads of laundry waiting, he'd dump the idea of studying in favor of going to the gym to work out the sudden burst of aggression. Instead, he puts aside his laptop and launches to his feet. Pacing around the small common area is kind of disheartening. Not enough space. Exactly 7.3 ground-eating strides take him from the front door to the far corner of the room. To add insult to injury, he's pretty sure the teddy bear's eyes are following him as he paces in semi-frantic circles. Almost an hour of research adds up to nothing but confirmation of what he already knew, which is that Keith isn't fit to be anyone's baby. He's not delicate or innocent. He doesn't giggle or wear pretty things. He's just... The alarm on his phone chimes. Time to switch loads of laundry. It goes like this for a while. Switching out laundry loads on the hour, washer to dryer, rinse and repeat. The mound of clean clothes piled on their couch awaiting folding grows slowly but surely. Google racks up more and more questionable searches that probably put him on some kind of government watch list while the teddy bear judges him. Only then he goes down with load 4 and finds Griffin opening his washer, presumably to pull out his and Shiro's towels and replace it with Griffin's own smarmy Ralph Lauren polos. Fuck that. Keith accidentally smacks Griffin with the laundry bag he borrowed from Shiro as he elbows past. Because Griffin isn't expecting it, or maybe because Keith used a little more force than strictly necessary, Griffin goes stumbling out of the way. "My washer," he says, casually. "Back dryer is mine too." Everyone knows that the back dryer is the only reliable one in the building. All the others range between theoretical fire hazard and actualized fire trap. Griffin sputters. This is only slightly more effective as a threat than his puffing polo-clad chest. He looks like the world's most offended pigeon. "You can't just claim the best washer and dryer is yours." "Okay," Keith says. Pulling out the towels, he takes them over to the back dryer and starts to change out the loads. Since it's laundry day, the day of certifiable disasters, Griffin follows him. "Hey, I was talking to you," Griffin says. That one stupid flippy part of his hair practically quivers with indignation. "This is a communal laundry room." I'm doing communal laundry. Somehow, he manages to say this with a straight face. Because, look, he knows this is a bit of a stretch. Like using the carpool lane when Shiro and he go into town for groceries. But it's worth it to see the look on Griffin's smug face. Turns out he didn't need a trip to the gym to work off his aggression, just an encounter with his middle school bully. You're doing laundry for someone? Griffin couldn't sound more shocked if Keith had outright decked him. Keith would know. He's outright decked Griffin before. Griffin appears in his peripheral vision, eyebrows pinched together. Who? Shiro. The dryer door shuts with a clang, but it's not loud enough to cover Griffin's amused snort. Unease pricks at the back of Keith's spine. It's the only warning he gets, and it's not enough. Really? What did you do to tick him off that you're on laundry duty? I thought he'd put up with anything from you. Keith grabs the bag of clean clothes, turns on his heel, and leaves. Folding laundry doesn't do much to drown out the thoughts swirling through his head. He tries to ignore them anyway. None of it's new. The teddy bear judging him from the pile of folded clothing next to him is proof enough of that. You didn't have to fold, you know. Keith flinches and whips his head to look at the front door. It takes that long for his brain to register that the person talking to him is Shiro, who's not and never has been a threat to his safety. Forcing out a rusty chuckle, he says, It's not a big deal. Ignore the tension. Play off his own reaction. It doesn't work. Shiro's still got his backpack slung over his shoulder. Keys dangling from his fingertips, but his focus is on Keith. Did something happen? He asks. When Keith doesn't immediately answer, he straightens up. What happened? Nothing. Compulsively, Keith looks back down to his own lap and smooths out the creases on the t-shirt he'd been folding. It's one of Shiro's. He goes to add it to the folded pile when he catches sight of the bear. Shit, he mutters, eyes widening. Keys jingle as they're dropped on the counter. Keith, buddy. There it is, the coaxing tone that Shiro only brings out when he's decided that Keith's hiding something from him. The floor creaks beneath his weight as he heads for Keith. And the couch. And the fucking bear! Dire circumstances call for action. This last month and a half has taught him that much, at least. Keith makes a command decision and grabs the bear. Turning, like he's turning to face Shiro, he stuffs the bear under the couch. It goes reluctantly, because the clearance between the bottom of the couch and the floor is maybe 3 inches on a good day. The resistance hitches his otherwise smooth motion. What are you doing back so early? Keith grasps at straws. At salvation. Exactly 2 wrinkles appear in Shiro's forehead as he furrows his brow. My last meeting got cancelled. There really isn't enough space in this room. When he comes to a standstill, he's maybe a step away from Keith's kneeling form. Keith, what are you doing? Trying to shove the bear deeper into the couch. Looking for a sock. I think it got pushed under there. Earlier, Okay, Shiro says. Do you need help? No. Panic overrides rational thought. I've got it. What he's got is a blind certainty that Shiro can never know that he's trying to hide a teddy bear from him. Keith drops, hips up and face down, as he shoves his arm, and the bear, deeper under the couch. It takes some doing and a little bit of wiggling on his part, but the bear disappears into the dusty abyss. Fucking finally. Keith. The growl that comes out of Shiro's mouth is nearly unidentifiable as a word. Yeah? Keith withdraws his arm from under the couch, gets his elbows under his body, and turns to look over his shoulder. Whatever he's expecting, it's not this. Yeah, Shiro's still standing exactly where Keith left him. Looming over him, dressed in jeans and a black Henley that clings just so to the powerful lines of his torso. Basically a wet dream come to life. Nothing new with that. Except there's a heavy shadow near Shiro's groin and down his left thigh. It could be a trick of the light, or... Keith, Shiro says again. Unwillingly, Keith drags his gaze up to Shiro's face, haloed in the shitty lights of their dorm. Hard to make out the exact expression, but Keith gets an impression of vaguely pained. Guess I was wrong. Nothing under here. Are you sure? Words are coming out clearer now, but Shiro definitely has a punched-out cadence that worries Keith. You don't need to look again. Nah. No one ever needs to look under the couch for anything ever again. Ever. Keith settles back on his heels and picks up the folded pile of Shiro's clothes. Getting to his feet is an effort. So long spent kneeling has put his legs mostly to sleep, but he manages it. When he's closed the distance between them, he can tell that vaguely pained is actually a pretty accurate read. Maybe Shiro's getting a migraine. Those happen. Something about how the IED concussed him makes migraines come on with pressure systems. Keith feels dickish for keeping Shiro here this long, worrying about him when Shiro should be laying down to sleep off the nightmares and a migraine. That's why he bites his lip and holds out the clothes like an offering. Here, I know it's not military standard, but I refolded everything at least twice to get it close. Shiro stares down at the offered clothing, takes in the neat corners and crisp lines. Looks pretty close, he says. Whatever was eating at him before drifts away, leaves behind a fond smile and gentle eyes. Thanks for doing this. No. It said firmly, and that would be enough. But then Shiro puts his hand over Keith's on the clothes, holds it, and rubs his thumb over the backs of Keith's knuckles. You did a good job, Keith. Part of him still wants to protest. Okay, he says, maybe a little subdued, but his mouth is dry from the way Shiro's focusing on him. There's barely enough space between them as it is. Shiro steps closer. Looming. Used to be that he only did this once in a blue moon, but in the last month or so, it's turned into a real habit. Keith still can't figure if he hates it or not. Depends on the day. Now, tell me, what happened today? You're tense. No fucking way is Keith explaining about the teddy bear or the Google deep dive into daddy kink. Which leaves. I ran into Griffin in the laundry room. I handled it. An understanding kind of hum leaves Shiro. They've never really talked about the couple of years he spent around here in middle school that put him at odds with Griffin. It's okay, though. Shiro gets it. Even now, his eyes have gone softer, and his prosthetic comes up to press against the dip of Keith's spine. I'm sorry, he says. The words don't mean anything. Sympathy, maybe, or empathy. But they soothe over Keith anyway. Make him want to duck his head and tuck his whole body into Shiro's chest. That's not something he can have, though. Besides, migraine or no, the earlier exhaustion has just written itself deeper into Shiro. The bruises beneath his eyes look darker, and his skin seems a little too tight over his cheekbones. How did your day go? It was fine. Shiro says. Lies. Just from the pinch between his eyebrows, Keith knows what he's going to say next before he says it. I should probably head back to the library and get ahead on my work. Can we stay in tonight? Keith blurts out. All he wants is to curl into Shiro's side and feel the rumble of Shiro's laugh under his cheek and drift off to the sound of Shiro's heartbeat, knowing that they're both okay. Things he doesn't know how to admit, but he can ask for them if it means Shiro doesn't go back to the library to avoid the nightmares. I know it's not Friday, but... Fingertips rub over the knobs of Keith's vertebrae in a calming motion. It feels like Shiro is weighing the consequences as he examines Keith's face. When he gives in easy. Like it doesn't cost him anything, even though it does. Keith knows it does. Yeah, we can stay in tonight. Whatever you want, buddy. Maybe it makes him a bad person, but Keith's selfish enough to take this. Go put these away, then, Keith says, pushing the clothes into Shiro's chest. A warm glow settles in his gut as Shiro takes the neat stack, proof that Keith did something good today. I'm gonna go call for takeout. Bossy, Shiro says, but there's no heat behind the word. I'll be out in a minute. Remember to order an actual salad to go with the pizza this time, would you? All of that was too fucking close, Keith thinks, as he picks up his own pile of clothes. Unfolded, because unlike some people, he doesn't have years of military discipline riding his ass. They get dumped unceremoniously into his closet. Grabbing his phone, he dials the number of the closest pizza place and starts up their usual order. As he confirms toppings with the kid on the other end, he wanders back into the main area. The last tension of the day releases from his spine at the sight of Shiro sitting on the couch and flicking through their movie queue. Salad, Shiro mouths at him. Keith rolls his eyes, but adds a salad to the order. When he hangs up the call, he says, Should be here in 20 minutes. Sounds good, Shiro says. Now come here. Of course, Keith goes, and lets himself be pulled down onto the couch to sprawl over Shiro's lap. Movies scroll by on the screen, but he doesn't pay attention. Whatever Shiro picks is fine. Instead, he focuses on the shift of Shiro's thighs beneath his belly. Folding his arms under his head, he lets himself drift, barely aware of anything beyond the weight of Shiro's hand as it settles gently on the small of his back.